Welcome back to the Vintage Super League. We've seen Eric pull out to a 2-0 lead so far, with this last match not being the most interactive. Workshops against Belcher has to be one of the most lopsided matches pretty much in Vintage.
Yeah, definitely the kind of the alignment of the decks there worked out really in Ephraim's favor, which is in this kind of a format where it's A versus A, B versus B, C versus C. It's gonna sometimes happen that way for one player or the other. Um,
Yeah, to make it clear, each player has three decks. You play A, like you said, A versus A, B versus B, C versus C. If Randy wins this match and makes it go to at least a match four, then the players can choose any of their decks, though the opponent will not know which one they're playing. And then, of course, if Randy wins that one, we go to match five. It's best 3 out of 5. But again, since Eric is 2-0, he could lock this up right now, and we could never see A play B or C play A or whatever.
yeah, I definitely think the kind of the random pair part of this is very interesting, and hopefully we'll get the chance to get to that. Although Ephraim here is knocking on the door of victory, so we'll see if they can drag it out a little bit longer.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You could play three of the same deck, but one of the disadvantages to playing the same deck three times is if your opponent has a deck that's a good matchup against it, then they could just choose that deck in matches 4 and 5. So you certainly don't want to play three of the same deck. You could play two. That would make things a little different, but either way, I don't think that most people are going to show up with three of the same deck the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I think in a format that's as wide open as Vintage typically is, I think you want to have more of a toolbox available for the final two matches, and don't want to get yourself trapped, so much in the previous spot.
So we're going to be getting to the match pretty soon since the guys are getting ready. The matchup we have now is actually Randy on Mentor Control against Eric playing Oath of Druids. So traditionally a match that favors Oath, especially game one, but with enough sideboard. Oh, okay. Looks like Randy's actually playing Oath. So the point remains, Oath in game one is fairly favored, I think. But sideboard, if the Mentor deck can sideboard enough Containment Priest, Grafdigger's Cage, that sort of thing
Right.
to to balance it. Though Ephro's got Notion Thief in his hand, and Notion Thief is one of the cards that if it resolves, actually causes huge problems for Oath. Sometimes you could still lose with Gristlebrand on the table if there's a Notion Thief out.
Yeah, the main deck notion is an interesting touch here from Eric. I think that's not as common in lists at least that I've looked at.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet one of. It also makes sense in a mentor deck instead of like a pyromancer deck, for example, because mentor decks are incentivized to play all the moxes and mana crypt or soul ring, whereas the pyromancer decks tend not to do that. Well, drawing second Gristlebrand can't be great there.
No, that's definitely not what he was hoping for. And he may even only have two in his deck. He might have to find a brainstorm now.
Though, if he's playing the show and tell oath list that Rich Shea or something similar to what Rich Shea played, which is also similar to a lot of the oath lists that float around at tournaments, he would have three Gristlebrand's. Some number of them have
Right.
three at least.
Yeah, that definitely has been the more recent build. I think it's older builds that used to only play two copies. Oh, that tends. I think that swings back and forth as the format kind of oscillates.
It also just depends on how greedy you are.
Yeah, I've never played the third one myself. I've always just run the two when I've played Oath.
One of the reasons to run three is that when you do want to rely on show and tell post board, you end up wanting more cards to actually show and tell into play. But I don't think you really need three necessarily. So Randy did preordain into Forbidden Orchard, which clearly one of the cards he was looking for, given that he has an oath. Ifro doesn't have a good way to stop that. In fact, Ifro's hand is kind of medium. I think he's going to burn repeal here.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Just get the cycle here. Start filling his graveyard for these dig through times, and obviously forcible always a great draw step.
Yeah,
And
Randy does not have any backup here. He's really just on this oath. He has no way to draw extra cards unless he left the second card on top. And besides the one oath, he's got a pair of Gristlebrands only. So if you're Randy, do you like mental misstepping this preordain? I clearly chose not to, but
In general, I like aggressively attacking the card selection spells. It depends on what Randy thinks he's on. I mean, opening on Volcanic, he probably thinks it's some sort of Delver build. Um, and there, maybe he wants to save the misstep to protect, to stop like an Ancestral or to counter a Pyroblast. In this spot, though, with his hand being so kind of devoid of action, I kind of like denying the preordain.
yeah, my tendency is to do that, especially since preordain can dig for forcible, and that's one of the cards you care about. You don't need misstep to protect your oath. The only card that you can misstep that interacts with oath is spell pierce, which is
Yep.
not super common these days.
Yeah, if his hand maybe he had his own forcible and he was ready to fight a battle, I could see holding the misstep because then the Pyroblast actually is relevant. But
Yeah, but he was pretty far away from having forcible, so things looking pretty good for Ifro because now he can actually cast Dig Through Time this turn. Preordain puts a 5th card, and Scalding Tarn puts a 6th card.
yeah, that's going to be huge.
I imagine you just let the Mental Misstep resolve, you play your Scalding Tarn. You could dig now, but I would generally want to wait. There aren't very many counters Randy could have, especially since now that Randy's revealed himself to be Oath. Randy's probably not on mana drains. That's just not a combination that goes well together.
Yep.
So Randy actually drew a very good one. Time Walk is one of the cards you really want to draw when you have this Demonic Tutor plan. If Randy leads with Time Walk here, which seems somewhat likely, would you just Pyroblast it?
I assume so. If you're Ifro, I mean, he has so few cards in hand that what else are you looking to Pyroblast in this spot? I mean, the only thing if you're worried about him having like, an Ancestral, he's been sandbagging. Interesting, he leads with Demonic Tutor.
Leading with Demonic Tutor, well, it depends what Randy's plan is. My assumption is that he's going to get a Oath.
I assume so as well, which is going to run into Ifro's Dig, looking for a Forcible here, I assume.
So it's interesting. If Randy's plan is to cast Oath this turn, then this makes perfect sense. If his plan was to cast Demonic Tutor then Time Walk, I would really rather Time Walk first, since Time Walk has so much more value once you've cast Demonic Tutor, and it'll make Ifro play differently. But if he's just going to cast Oath and save the Time Walk for once Oath resolves, then that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so he's getting Show and Tell. So maybe he only has 2 Gristlebrand's then. Because
Yeah,
Show and Tell,
yeah. It's possible he just wants. He may not. Yeah, he can't even play it right now. Yeah.
So if you're going to Time Walk, I really like Time Walking first and then tutoring afterwards.
Especially if you're getting show and tell, like you want to bait the Pyroblast, I think, here on the Time Walk.
Though I think Kiefer's got a pretty good chance of wanting to just Pyroblast this anyway. It lets you untap with Dig.
Yep, I like that line.
Oath does get around Flusterstorm and Pyroblast, which makes me wonder if Randy only has the 2 Gristles. Otherwise, it seems like Oath is a bit of a safer play. Show and Tell does go into effect right away, but Randy's not under any actual pressure. Yeah, I definitely like this Pyroblast here that looks like Ifro's going to do. It's a shame to cast a 1-mana spell when you could cast Dig, but this stops Randy from getting 4 mana and an extra card. It seems kind of insane to let Randy untap here.
No, I definitely like the line that Eric's taking in this spot.
I like it even more now.
We draw his best possibles.
So, one thing that is actually kind of funny is Ifro's got Dig and Ancestral. So let's say Ifro somehow misses on Force of Will or Pyroblast, right, in the next 10 cards. Even if Randy then plays Show and Tell, Ifro can put in Notion Thief, and then Gristlebrand's only a 7/7 lifelink flyer. Granted, that's still pretty good, but Ifro just drew 3 cards, then drew the best 2 out of 7, and if he's not finding Force of Will, he's going to find other cards. Ifro could conceivably win the game through Gristlebrand there, especially if you just, find Swords to Plowshares or something.
Right, exactly. I mean, these mentor lists play removal spells that can kill a Gristlebrand, so it's not as scary if it's just a 7/7 body. That seems like it should be something he can deal with.
Yeah, that was step 1. He did not draw anything off that. So Ifro has not played a land yet, so he Well, he can't quite cruise in dig. He can start by cruising and then have more mana up to play the rest of his spells. On a 4-color deck here, we see Tundra, Underground Sea, and Volcanic Island.
Huh. I wonder what the black is for here.
My guess would be either something like Cabal Therapy or like, in the sideboard maybe, or a tutor or something along those lines. So Ephro's a mana short of casting Dig Through Time. He can. Oh, he's got the Notion Thief in his hand. Of course, that's a black card.
Right. Oh, right. Not the best set of cards he's picked up here. I mean, lots of mana sources.
No, and Misdirection is not the pitch counter he was looking for. He's going to play the Mana Crypt, not knowing that Randy's plan is to use Show and Tell. Though, Ephro is going to get to cast Dig next turn, so if he finds a Swords to Plowshares off that, he's in pretty good shape.
And he also gets to drop the Motion Thief in off the Show and Tell, too, so he doesn't have to leave the mana up to cast it, which is pretty nice here.
Yeah. Depending on how light his Black Splash is, he could also only have one Underground Sea, though, given that he played Mana Crypt, that seems unlikely. I kind of like strip mining Volcanic and then Show and Tell on second main phase. You don't need the mana, and Ephro could be playing the card Mana Drain. It's not inconceivable that there's one in his deck or two in his deck.
Yeah, I like that line. That makes sense.
Like, you haven't seen, like, we're calling this Mentor because that's what we were told by someone who looked at the deck list. So yeah, so it is a Mentor deck, but Randy doesn't know that. Randy's just seen all these Delve spells and some cantrips, which obviously points towards that sort of thing, but is by no means a guarantee.
Yeah, but at this point he's seen black and red, so he probably doesn't think there's white in the deck. Right? I mean, I think that's a reasonable inference for him to make.
So the classic standoff, Gristlebrand versus Notion Thief. This is where the Mana Crypt actually could punish Ephro. If he loses one flip, in the next 3 turns, that's a turn less Gristlebrand has to attack.
Do you like not? Oh, never mind. He didn't have. Was he 1 mana? Was he 1 mana short from digging?
Yeah, he could not quite dig.
Yeah. Sorry. Yep, that makes no sense.
Well, here's the combo, right? Dak Notion Thief. Ephro gets to Dak plus it on Randy. Randy has to. He doesn't draw. Ephro draws the 2, but Randy still has to discard. Granted, Dak gets killed by Gristlebrand, but it saves Ephro some damage and draws Ephro 2 cards and makes Randy discard a card. So Dave mentioning that Ephro could have put a land into play with Notion Thief. It's true. It's a little safer to put Notion Thief into play because that way you don't get countered. But I guess Randy only had like one card left over in his hand, so that seems unlikely. So maybe it would have been better to cast Notion Thief and then put a land into play. Here we see, it looks like Ephro found a card that's very critical when it comes to dealing Gristlebrand, which is Fire Ice. Often these games are going to come down to icing Gristlebrand for a crucial turn here.
Yeah, ice in this spot is huge. I mean, saving a 14-point swing. Granted, he doesn't have enough power yet on the board to be pressuring Randy's life total.
No, but he can. But Ephro's going to get to see so many cards because Randy still can't draw extra cards off Gristlebrand, and then next turn, Dak plus Dig Through Time is just plus Ephro's draw step plus the card he gets off Fire Ice. He's going to cast it on upkeep to make sure Randy has no way to counter it. Yeah, Ephro's going to get to draw tons of cards, and Randy's going to have no cards in his hand at the end of all of it. So it's going to be hard. I think Ephro's a pretty substantial favorite. Well, maybe not a substantial favorite, but I think Ephro's ahead here. I think Ephro's going to see enough cards that assuming his deck has the tools necessary to beat a card like Gristlebrand, and it sounds like
that his build has to. I mean, there'd be a very odd build of this list that can't.
And it sounds like
that card.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's got at least one Jace the Mind Sculptor. I mean, with 34 cards left, Ephro's still of those.
Yep.
Potentially more. Especially since Griselbrand isn't ending the game in one hit. In one hit, Griselbrand is killing Dak, which means Ifro just gets a couple more turns to cast card draw, which either finds answers or other card draw.
And now that he's the mentor going too in this spot, it's gonna. We've seen a couple times like double mentor overwhelm a single Griselbrand, and here we're not supposed to. Even just one can do it, can pull that off.
And Ifro's just making it look easy, up to and including winning all the mana crit flips so far. So Dave's still discussing his alternate line of play in the chat, which is don't actually play Notion Thief in response to Show and Tell, or put it into play off Show and Tell. Wait for Randy to activate Griselbrand. In response, cast Notion Thief. Randy can Griselbrand down to 1 again in response, but can't cast Force of Will. That's kind of interesting. The only thing that does not work against is if Randy just passes the turn, it's kind of bad for you because then you just have 4 mana stuck because you can never cast Notion Thieves.
Yep.
But Randy probably activates Griselbrand there. I wonder if you're more likely to win with that line. It is definitely worth debating. So I wonder if Ifro does not have a Tundra left. He's got to have 2 Tundras in his deck if he's got Notion, or rather, Monastery Mentor in his deck. Yeah, Randy apparently checking out Twitter to see what's going on during Ifro's extended journey through his own deck.
Hopefully, no one tweeted what what Ifra's holding.
Yeah, that'd be an oddly specific tweet. I wonder if Randy's discovered the world of having two monitors, because that's a pretty big game.
Seemingly not from this little peek up.
I wonder if Ifro has to restart Magic Online or something like that.
Would not be the first time, but no, it looks like, hey, here we go. We're back in action.
All right, so here's Monastery Mentor.
Yeah, starts building a million guys. Working towards that dig.
And so Ifro's got enough counters that Randy's not going to be able to resolve a ton that's relevant. Randy could resolve, I guess it really has to be untargeted spells that don't cost too much or they get Flusterstormed, or too few and they get Mental Misstep.
Yeah, it's a pretty narrow and very narrow range.
Could be like Time Vault, but you couldn't resolve Key or Tinker. Well, there is the Mind Sculptor. And Ifro has the Mox. And Ifro's still got so many cards that even if Randy were to draw 14 with Griselbrand, forcing Ifro to draw 14, Ifro was not going to get decked. I don't think that's going to happen.
I agree with that.
And Mentor plus Notion Thief out means that this is probably way more than lethal next turn. So as it turned out, the Griselbrand didn't even get a single hit in. It's possible it would need like 3 to close this game, because you probably have to kill Dak first, but even then, it got 0.
It's pretty impressive that he's able to, just dismantle this Oath deck so soundly. And Randy's draw here was not bad at all. I mean, he had a very reasonable draw.
Randy had turn 2 Oath. Turn 3, he could have had Oath or Show and Tell if the Time Walk resolved. So kind of like a turn 2 threat, turn 3 threat, turn 4 threat. Doesn't really get a whole lot better than that. I mean, Randy never had a Force of Will, but past that. Randy not bothering to vamp in response, probably just wants to see if Ifro shows him more cards. Ifro has to put, I guess, any spell in the stack and it's lethal.
Yep. We see Gushes that spell. Just casting it.
Yeah. It would be tough for Ifro to not be able to win this game, given how the turn started.
And there we go. All right, you throw one game away from advancing here to the semifinals.
And the game should get better for Ifro. I mean, he did win this game kind of handily, but post board, Ifro's going to have Containment Priest, Grafdigger's Cage, some combination of those cards.
Yep.
And Randy's deck is not going to get a whole lot better. Oath is just trying to hit parity after board. Like, you board in more show and tells or cards like Abrupt Decay or even cards like Massacre or some other way to, or Toxic Deluge, whatever. And all that's doing is kind of trying to negate their sideboard cards because your game one is good. It's just post board games get a little tougher.
Right.
So, I on my layover coming back from the Pro Tour in Brussels, Ifro was like, "Hey, what should I play in the in the semis? Do you have any decks you like?" And I was like, "You know shops better than I do, but I do like this Mentor deck and I like Doomsday." And looks like Ifro ran those. Then I landed and just drove straight home, and I'm doing commentary now.
You must be a
So
little bit. I'm destroyed, and I've been here for a day. I'm not sure
yeah,
what time it is at this point.
7:21 p.m. Pacific.
So they say.
Yeah.
That's not my current biological clock. That's for sure.
Well, going going west is a lot easier than going east. So
That is true. It definitely makes a big improvement coming this direction. It was much harder going the other way.
but I had a good present when I got back, which was I actually got back about 10 minutes before the first match started. Got to or the first two matches really, and got to watch. Ifro, I guess in the second match he dismantled Randy fairly handily. The first match was interesting though. Doomsday, it felt like both players were just drawing insane.
Oh
And
yeah, the haymakers that went to that very first game were pretty impressive. It's going back and forth a lot. Yeah, and both you and I have played Doomsday in VSL,
yeah,
and those were harder games than the games I had to play. Um, you know, but so they had to earn that one.
yeah, Doomsday, Doomsday's the kind of deck that when it's like drawing well, it looks incredibly good. It's not as much as Belcher. Belcher, of course, is just going to kill you on turn one every game. But
Yep.
Doomsday has these games where it just like goes preordained duress, misstep, Doomsday with Force of Will backup, and it just like feels pretty oppressive. Well, we've got an impressive set of hands here. Randy's clearly going to be keeping this one, but Ifro's got turn one Jace, and Randy does not, unless he preordains into an answer, doesn't have a way to stop that.
That is one of the better starts. I mean, it's one of my preferred starts in Vintage. I love me a Jace, even if maybe it isn't as good as it used to be.
Turn one Jace is pretty hard to beat. I mean,
Oh yeah,
it does get pyroblasted, but it just draws so many cards.
it's especially hard for these oath decks. I think because they're all set up to fight on the creature axis pretty effectively,
Yeah.
but they're really not designed to be fighting on this axis at all. So you have to come at them from a completely different angle.
Tapping the land for green, then playing Mana Crypt is kind of funny sequencing.
No,
But
you're ready to get the bad news here.
yeah, and because there's no Orchard, Ifro's just going to play the Jace. He's got Wear
Yep.
Tear, which he can use next turn, but he doesn't even need to. And if he actually waits till he gets to 3 mana, he can blow up Mana Crypt and Oath of Druids.
That's
not
pretty
even-
gross.
It's not even clear that Mana Crypt is good for Rainer to have him play after, it did its job. It got the Oath into play.
It might
does
as well
mean-
leave there, count down the life total,
Yeah.
put him on a clock.
It does mean that a Show and Tell gets better, and Randy may have Jace also in his deck, but... Well, at least the cards he found were not what he was looking for. He found more Gushes and Digs. Really, he just wants Force of Wills at this point. Once you have a Jason
Right.
play, all you want is ways to protect it, preferably ways that don't cost any mana.
Yeah, I mean, even free mana here would be great too. I mean, he does have the shuffle effect, which is nice. I mean, he'll get to get rid of some of the excessive, kind of expensive interaction he has, or the expensive card selection that he has access to here.
I do like Beseju. That's the kind of card that can win you games that are otherwise unwinnable. Which somehow it's turn one and it's already turned into that kind of game for Randy. Somehow the turn one Jace with Wear and Tear in hand makes it very difficult for me to really imagine Randy having an incredibly good shot this game.
He
It's
needs
not
to be a huge underdog here.
yeah. It's not over, but Randy's Oath doesn't do anything without Orchard. If he finds Orchard, Wear Tear can still kill it. Though Mental Misstep can potentially stop that. But most importantly, Ifro's just brainstorming every turn with Jace.
Yeah. He's going to get buried at a card advantage here. He needs to find an orchard, basically immediately to try to find someone to steal this, and then another oath, I guess. I mean, he could brainstorm into perfects here and get back in this maybe.
Yeah, when you're playing Vintage and you have a card like Brainstorm in your hand, clearly you always have outs to just draw the exact cards you need. But
Right.
I do think this is going to be tough for Randy here.
Yeah, this is just not gone Randy's way at all. Really, any of these matches, which is obviously unfortunate for him. But that's Vintage sometimes. I mean, it can be very punishing.
Yeah, they're Vintage is a great format. I love playing Vintage. It's my favorite format. But there are definitely like sets of games that aren't close and don't feel close. So Randy is waiting on the brainstorm. He may have cleared it into two good ones, which would make sense then. Though I'm kind of guessing Mental Misstep is not it. It seems hard to keep Mental Misstep when you're already just looking for actual action. You don't have much to protect.
Can't really. Even if Randy somehow gets his Jace off the board, unless he's able to actually get the Grizzlebrand into play, then the library just takes over and keeps burying him under this card disadvantage.
Well, Randy did brainstorm pretty nicely. Randy actually could get himself out of this game. In fact, I think Randy's going to win here. Because now Randy can go Lotus, DT, or doesn't actually need the Lotus. He can just go Orchard, DT, Time Walk. Ifro goes to Wear Tear the Oath and it gets Mental Misstep. So drawing Orchard Demonic Tutor, it doesn't even need the Lotus. So it's actually just Orchard Demonic Tutor. Is what he needed here.
Right, no, you're right.
So I mean, Ifro has Gush. So if Ifro goes for Gush, he could.
He can read. He can spike another blue counterspell, I guess.
Yeah, a misstep, a force of will, even a misdirection, I guess. No misdirection. You can't really misdirect Mental Misstep very effectively. So
that one is immune.
Randy did not go for it.
Huh.
But he also didn't play beside you. So I guess he just played. I guess he just played Orchard and he's going to use that.
And Ifro draws Force of Will.
He does.
Which is going to be huge here.
So Randy's plan is just to use Orchard and save Demonic Tutor for something else. I guess I don't know. I kind of favor being aggressive there and just going for the Time Walk. I don't see what the big drawback to that is.
Yeah, I agree completely.
I wonder if Ifro plays around Misstep. Ifro does have the Forcible regardless, but seems kind of free to play around Mental Misstep here.
And yeah, just cast both Wear and Tear.
I mean, it's not completely free. You don't get to use Library of Alexandria because you have to tap it for mana, but
at this stage, though, when you're this far ahead on cards, I don't think you're worried about the one card from the library. I think you'd much rather just you're up so much in terms of that resource.
Yeah, you have 2 Delve spells and 2 Gushes in hand as well.
Yeah, you don't need to care about that at all here, I think.
All right, so Randy's going to force Ifro's hand here. Tapping the Orchard, giving Ifro a token. So I guess people are saying that the suspicion is that Randy wanted to cast Time Walk with Grizzlebrand and play to get around Jace. I think if you get Grizzlebrand and play and draw 14 cards, you're in pretty good shape. You should be able to find an answer.
You don't need to try to optimize for that condition. You need to optimize for when
I don't think so. And Ifro gets to see like 5 cards a turn. That makes me so wary of passing the turn there.
Yep. Yeah, you just need to try to win as soon as you have the opening.
So Weird Tear looks like it's displaying as costing 1 white, but yeah, you cannot misstep that.
Yeah, he went for both sides. Okay, and here we see. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see how he gets out of this.
Well, Boseiju lets you play an uncounterable demonic tutor. Afterwards, you get to get another spell that's uncounterable, but
I
maybe
mean,
a
you can get
Yawgmoth spell?
uncounterable. Jog will even do anything in this spot. I mean, you get to get the Lotus back. You get to cast another uncounterable DT. But the fact that you don't have the guy in, you don't have a Griswold in hand for Showtell, and you can't make Oath uncounterable is a pretty tough
Yeah,
spot to kind of walk that line.
it does let you see a bunch of cards, but at this point, Ifro's just, he's kind of going off. He drew a Time Walk, which, when you have a Jace and a library going, is, of course,
Yeah, it's
millions of
just
cards.
Ephraim has all the cards at this point. I mean, that's an axis that we're just never going to see Randy compete on. He needs to find a way to kind of go over the top of Ephraim having everything, and Boseju's a way to do that, but he doesn't have anything to Boseju, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and he can only use it once a turn, which if you were trying to set up a Yogwell turn makes that
Right.
unfortunate. So Time Walk plus Dak plus Jace. I mean, this is where Time Walk is just absurd. Like Time Walk is clearly a fine card. Most every blue deck runs it just because it's such good value.
Right.
But
Even just on
it's
turn
not
two, right? It just get you ahead
yeah.
on tempo.
But it's not often like incredibly gross because usually it's just like an extra land cycling, draw a card, maybe hit him with a 2/2 or something if you have like a random dude in play. Here it represents a Jace activation, a Dak Faden activation, a Library of Alexandria activation. It's just like any of
Anyone
those
who's
things is worth 2 mana.
right, anyone who's done a lot of cubing knows how powerful just any of the time walks are once you get planeswalkers going. You
Yeah.
know, that's like a pretty, it's a really powerful interaction.
And so the other thing to mention is that after this matchup series is concluded, I'm going to be potentially after this game, depending on that, I'll be interviewing the winner, which is potentially Efro. But yeah, I'll be doing an interview with the winner here.
Kind of
To
looks that way on all fronts of potentiality and maybes that you just said.
well, I don't want to get too far ahead here, but Efro is in the spot where he has more counters in his hand than Randy's going to have cards the rest of the game. And he just drew a card like Containment Priest, which makes it he puts him in further ahead. Oh, he still hadn't activated Jace yet, of course. So already had 10 cards in hand. Yeah, I mean,
This is pretty over.
sometimes I mean, again, the way vintage works, sometimes when you get ahead, you just run away with it. Like we've seen it plenty of games when someone's playing workshops where they play two lock pieces or a lock piece, and then next turn their opponent's not able to play something. The next turn they play another one. Then they're definitely not able to play anything. Then they play two more, and the game is just completely over.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely be. It's a very snowbally format when things really start spiraling. It's kind of the opposite end of the explosive spectrum. You have some games that end on turn one, and then
Yeah.
games like this that are just one player is just up 30 cards, and it might take a little while to actually end the game, but it's functionally over for a very long time.
Ooh, Randy's only 1 mana short of casting Gristlebrand here. Not that it would resolve, but it would be kind of funny. Also, has Yufro still won all of his mana crypt flips? Like,
Think so.
yeah, it seems like he's not taking much damage off that card.
So the card's a lot better when it doesn't deal you any damage.
It's just a strictly better Soul Ring. So here,
Yeah.
Randy is using Boseiju to cast a Demonic Tutor, but he's going to either have to wait a turn to play that spell uncounterable or just run it out now. It's tough because Containment Priest stops both Oath of Druids and Show and Tell, so that does cut off many of the avenues Randy has to victory.
It's just a really hard card for the Oath decks to deal with. It's just like so efficient against them.
And one of the problems for Oath with Containment Priest is it attacks for 2 damage. Sometimes you're staring down 2 Grafdigger's Cage, which doesn't stop show and tell, and doesn't attack you, whereas Containment Priest stops both of your angles of attack,
Yep.
and actually has its own angle, which is to attack.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Oh, and speaking of rotisserie draft, someone mentioned in the chat, I guess they're playing out their modern rotisserie draft tomorrow evening. Randy, Marshall, I don't know who else was in the draft. It was like
Sam Black, yeah.
Rashad, uh, yeah, Adam Prozac, a couple other people.
Yep.
So that sounds like it could be interesting. Randy casting Demonic Tutor and just hoping there's something in his deck that he couldn't think about.
Wishing that this was an old school wish where you could actually go through your collection, pull out your trade binder. I'm not sure if he could do that, if he could get out of this one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a card in Magic that Randy could get here. Not with he's 5 mana, 3 of which can be any color, but Ifro's hand is Force of Will, Mental Misstep, Pyroblast.
Yeah. I'm struggling to come up with what card he could go get in all of Magic here, but there are a lot of cards in Magic, so it's possible there's one that would save him.
All right, Yawgmoth's Will, which you got to respect, just going for the card that if it works, it'll win the game, even if you're not super confident that that's true. I also don't know if it would win the game if it worked. I guess Randy's going to wait a turn to cast it in an uncounterable fashion. Ifro is going to be able to cast Dig Through Time at the end of the turn, so yeah, Ifro's going to get to see his whole deck again, basically. Ifro could just end this game if he has, like, Yawgwill or Snapcaster in his deck, though he probably doesn't really have either of those cards. Just trying to figure out a way to get Time Walk back, but I suspect that card is gone for good. The other thing Ifro could look for here is if he's got a Strip Mine in his deck, just to find Strip Mine for Beseju, and that kind of puts the nail in the coffin.
Sure, yeah. Turn off any possible shenanigans Randy could try to get up to.
That eliminates all the variants from, like, you know, what could happen. Oh yeah, Aaron Forsyth, and of course Chris is the last participant of the
game. Right. Yep. Yeah, Chris was sending out some deck lists to the John Finkel mailing list, and it looks like he has a pretty sweet little green beatdown deck in that tournament.
So Ifro playing Notion Thief to enable Dak Faden. The Dak is going to just discard Gristlebrand Mental Misstep at this point. Oh no, I guess that'll be it. We'll conclude it with the greatest thief in the multiverse here. So looks like Ifro's advancing to play me, and the winner of us plays Chris in the finals. We're gonna hop out real quickly, get Ifro on here, and do a quick interview.